Hey everyone, it's me, Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi out here in Northern California. Welcome to the Dreaming of Spring Zentangle inspired class. I'm really excited to bring this class to you today. So let's talk about the things that we're going to need. I'm going to be working with the Micron Pn pen, but you can use your favorite Tangle pen, whichever one you prefer. I'm also going to be working with the Mizulov white pen. Now, if you like to use the Signo white gel pen or the Sakura white gel pen, you're welcome to use either one of those. You know me, I'm a Prismacolor girl, so grab your Prismacolor pencils because we're going to have a lot of fun with these. And then we're also going to be working with a blender stump. Some people refer to these as a tortillon. Now, if you don't have one of these, you can always use a Q-tip in lieu of one of these. They work great for blending. And then I'm also going to be working with my favorite tile here. I've got the Genesis tile from Tangled Yogi. You can go to the Tangled Yogi shop and check those out. They're really great. They're super smooth and they receive color pencil really, really well. And they're a really nice, heavy, dense cardstock, which is great. So if you don't have one of those, you can always just draw a 4.5 by 4.5 square on your sketch pad and just follow along with me. All right, with that said, let's get started with Dreaming of Spring. Okay, so I've had a chance to pick up my Micron Pn pen, and I'm going to go ahead and start to ink in my tile here. Now that I have my string all set up and ready to go, I'm going to turn the tile to make it work for my hands here. And I'll come to the inside and do the same. And you can see that I have a little wiggle in my hand today. That's just fine. However it works out for you is just how it should be. We're not looking for perfection here. We're looking for the real experience. So I'm going to go to the outside edge now and start to ink in the outside edge. I'm just going to do the aura underneath as well. I'm turning my tile. And really taking your time with this. When you're rushing, your lines give you away. Remember, it is a meditation. And just taking a moment to notice if you're holding your breath or tightening in any parts of your body as you're working on this to soften and meet the challenge in a gentle way. So there you can see I've inked in my string and I'm ready to start. You go ahead and finish up yours, and then when we come back, we're going to start with our first tangle. All right, so I'm going to pick back up my pencil here just for a moment, and I'm going to divide the space that's in the center of my diamond here. I'm going to turn this so that I can get to the other side, and this is hopefully going to give me close to center, which it looks like it is. And right in the center here, I'm going to make a little circle. And we're going to turn this circle into a tangle called Cruffle, but you can see that my circle is the size of maybe a pea or a Cheerio, maybe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about our tangle that we're going to work on. So the first tangle that we're going to do, and let me zoom in on this here so that you can really see what I'm up to, is we're going to work with a tangle called Cruffle. I like Cruffle because it's uh, a great tangle with a little bit of detailing, and you can do it two ways. Now, Cruffle is a circle with a lazy S moving through it, and then it has an aura on one side, and you can do an aura on the other side as well if that speaks to you. Now, I know for myself, I love a half Cruffle, so that means just doing one side with the aura. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over here, and I'm going to pick back up my Micron Pn pen, and I'm going to ink in just the circle. And once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and make my lazy S, and then I'm going to go ahead and aura one side. So you can see that's going to be my Cruffle for the piece here. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to start to add another tangle into the piece. So we are going to start to build our flower in the center here, and it's one of my favorite tangles. This is called Harari, and Harari is one of those beautiful tangles that has just a beautiful petal. So Harari, let's go ahead and get in there, is basically you have a petal, and then it's going to drop down, and then we're going to get these really kind of soft folds on the side to make it look as if the petal is curling. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this over, and we're going to start to build Harari into the piece. Now for me, when I've done this, I like to see the flower a little bit larger, because if it gets too small, it gets super busy in the center of the tangle. So I'm going to show you how I did it. The first thing that I did, you'll notice, is the piece that we have in the center where Cruffle is. Let me go ahead and zoom out for a minute. I'm going to turn my tile so now it looks like a square in your screen. Doesn't that look like a square? That's how I'm going to start it. So I'm not starting it on the diagonal. I'm actually going to start it on the vertical and the horizontal. So let's go ahead and zoom in. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by coming off the side of Cruffle here, and I'm going to build my petal out. And you'll notice that I'm not touching the edge, but I'm getting pretty darn close. So there's my first petal. I'm going to come in and I'm going to make a wave that drops down, and then I'm going to do a very slight curl that ends at mid petal on both sides, just like that. I'm going to turn my tile again, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to come out, come close to the edge, but not close enough so that I'm touching it. Coming back and down, I'm going to make my wave and drop in, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do those little pieces that end at mid petal. Turning the tile, coming out all the way towards the edge, but not quite, and dropping down. Make your wave and come to the point where it's halfway on the petal. Turning the tile, coming out, coming back in, make your wave, and dropping down to midpoint. So now we've got the beginnings of Harari. We're going to start to build out just a little bit more here, so you can see that I've got spaces for petals in between. I'm just going to come up and over, make my petal and drop down and touch, create the wave, and once again end midpoint. You can see that I'm going for the midpoint. Here we go. Take your time. Coming through one more time. Coming down and coming down. Super fun, super easy, beautiful looking flower. This is one of my favorite patterns to work with. And then coming out and coming out. So there we have the beginnings of Harari here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Harari build a little bit. So what we're looking for is almost just a two-tiered flower. So I'm going to come in right here, right off the side of this one, and I'm going to create an arc and let it connect to this petal. I'm going to go ahead and create the wave. Notice how that petal is a little bit larger, and then I'm going to let this drop down and touch, drop down and touch. Okay, I'm going to do that again. Coming over to this petal right here, make an arc, let it connect, create a wave, and let it touch, let it touch. Turning, so these are getting a little bit larger here. Make the wave, let it touch, and let it touch. Getting a really nice feel here. Now, if you notice that you're getting really close to your border, just lift up your pen and come out the other side, and that should work for you. Really enjoying what you're doing here, staying present, letting the tangle have 100% of your attention. Coming over. Coming down and in. Taking your time. Create the wave and touch and touch. So there you can see I've got my second tier. Now in the corners here you can see I've got these kind of interesting interstices there. So I'm just going to go in. An interstice is almost like a triangular like shape here. I'm going to come in and create a nice petal. Make a wave. Let it come down. I'll go to the next corner and do the same. So really we're just filling up that space in a really gentle way. Coming over to this corner right here. This one won't be as large, but that's all right. No flowers are perfect. And there you can see I've filled in the space in a really nice way. So go ahead and finish up yours. I'll finish up mine. And when we come back, we're going to add a new tangle into the piece. Okay, so let's start to work outward here, and we're going to start to work in the corners of the piece here. So we're going to work with our ladybugs, and what this is going to look like is I'm going to start to come to each corner here, and I'm going to zoom in on this one to start. I'm going to do just a small circle right on the tips of the corner on the inside of the piece here. So I'm not on the exterior, I'm right here where this little border is. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make my little circles, and you can see that I'm just going to each one and doing the same size circle. So do your best, and you can see I'm puddling it in. So now once I have that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little arc that's going to attach the head of the ladybug to the exterior. So I'm just going to go around and do the same, a nice little arch right there. And they'll all be slightly different. Don't worry about it too much. And then I'm going to come down from the center, so I'm going to line it up, and I'm going to make a petal-like shape that's going to come down. So I'll go to the next one and do the same. It's just a petal-like shape that attaches to the edges, lining up with the center as much as you can. And now here's the trick with ladybugs. So you don't want the dots that are in the wings to compete with the head. So you want to make sure that your dots are a little bit smaller on the wings, and then that way it won't compete with the head and look a little strange. So for me, I always put 3 in just because I was taught that 3 is a more interesting number. So I'm just going to do 3 in each, and you can see that I'm just focusing on keeping those dots a little bit smaller than the head. And turning. I taught a class with ladybugs last year, and one of the things that I loved about it was as a symbol, the ladybug as a reminder to pay attention to the little things in life. So the sweet little things, not the monotonous little things. So you might find yourself looking at a beautiful flower or something in nature that brings you a moment of awe. And that's really what the ladybug is a symbol of. Just to remember to look for the little beautiful things. So once you've had a chance to go around with those, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do the little legs. So I'm just going to do a little line that comes out and up so that she looks like she's got her little legs. I love ladybugs because they are great for rose gardens, and I used to have a wonderful rose garden when I lived in San Rafael, and we used to bring ladybugs in all the time to eat the pests off of the roses, and it worked really, really well. So I see them as a wonderful symbol. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to zoom out here, and then you can see there's my ladybugs. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to start to bring another tangle into these corners over here. Have fun! All right, so our next pattern that we're going to work with here, or tangle, is going to be called spoken. And spoken is made to look like a bicycle pedal. And I love this tangle because it's so much fun to work with here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a nice triangle, and if you've got a scratch piece of paper to play with, this is a great time to pull it out and play. So I'm going to zoom in here, and what I'm going to do is right in the center here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a line that attaches to the left side of my circle. I'm going to turn and come over here and do another. I'm going to come from this corner right over here and do another. Come from the bottom, attach to the left side, over here, and over here. So you can see it looks like the spokes of a wheel. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in behind each line. So you can see here's the line right here. I'm just going to come behind it, and I'm going to do a narrow aura that's going to connect back to the tip. So I'm just going to go to the next one. Here's my line. I'm going to stay right behind it, and I'm going to connect to the tip. Nice narrow auras. Right here, come right behind it and attach. Coming over here, attach, once more, and last time. And you can see that it almost makes it look like a sparkler or a pinwheel. Super fun and super easy. So let's go ahead and take that, and we're going to zoom into this corner right here. So you can see here I am. And right in the center, I always like to turn my triangle so that it's facing upward. I don't know why, it just helps me to start. So you can see I've got my triangle in here, and I'm going to come right into the center, and I'm going to make a little circle. From that top corner, I'm going to drop down and stay on the left-hand side of my circle. I'm going to turn my tile, and from the middle point right here, I'm going to drop in and stay on the left-hand side. Coming down from this corner right here, dropping down and connecting. Here I go, looking for the middle here. I'm going to continue to turn the tile, coming over to this corner, and one more time right in the middle over here. Once I've got that, I can come in right behind, and I'm going to drop in and go right to the point. See how that creates a narrow triangle in there? Super fun and super easy. Turning the tile counterclockwise, here's the line, we stay behind it, and we attach. Here's this line right here, staying behind, and dropping in and attaching. Over here, dropping in and attaching. Here's my line, dropping in and attaching. Last time right here, and attaching. So you can see that that creates that really nice little sparkler or pinwheel. Now, if that was a little confusing for you, here's another way to do it. So I'm just going to go to my next triangle, and I'm just going to come in, make my circle. I'm going to make my line that attaches, and if it feels more easy to you to come in right behind as you're going around, you can just attach as you go. So I'm just coming over to the next one. Notice that I turned counterclockwise here. I'm right in the middle, and I'm coming down and in, and then I'm attaching. So that's just another way of doing it. Remember, there's no one way to do this. This feels a little narrow to me, so I might go in front of it and attach. You can see I'm really taking my time with these. Our lines always give us away if we're rushing. I'm going to do this one in front just because it looks a little bit more narrow in there. Here comes the last one. So that's just another way of doing it. So I've got 2 more to go. You've probably got 2 more to go. I'll see you in a few minutes after you've finished this really fun tangle. So this is really coming along. Isn't that fun? I really enjoy these. I think that they're really fun tangles to do, and they bring a lot of movement into the corners. So we're going to let go of our pens for right now, and we're going to start to work with color. Now, before we start working with color, if it really bothers you to have pencil lines in here, you can always take an eraser and just erase your guidelines that were in the piece here. I just find that it just makes the color a little bit cleaner, and it's just a little bit more vivid. So I'm going to take that and put it off to the side here, and we're going to come right into our centerpiece. I'm going to pick up 3 colors for the centerpiece here. And I've got in my hand the magenta, which is PC930, one of my favorite colors. And then I also have in my hand the sunburst yellow, which is PC917. And then I also have in my hand the cadmium orange, which is PC118. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the yellow first, and I'm going to work with the side that is not auraed in. So this is the side that is blank. I'm going to start by doing little circles and going very lightly with that yellow. Once I've had a chance to establish the yellow on the page here, I'm going to go ahead and pick up that cadmium orange, and I'm going to just start from the bottom and work my way about halfway up. You can see that that pencil is working in little circles, and it has a really nice soft feel. This orange has a really nice mutedness to it, which I really enjoy. And by the way, if you're new to color and these colors are intriguing you, remember to write them down so that you can try them with other tangles that you do. They work really well in concert with each other. So now I've picked up my magenta, and I'm just dusting it with a little bit of magenta at the bottom. Now I'm going to give that magenta a little push at the very, very bottom to get a little bit of vividness here. Once I have that, I'm going to pick back up that yellow that we started with, and we're going to start to soften the edges here. And I'm going to work in little circles right where the orange is meeting the yellow to soften up the edge, and then I'll start to pull back onto that red and give that a little softening as well. And you can see that that gives it a really nice blend. So go ahead and finish up yours, and then when we come back, we're going to start to focus on the flower. So before we begin working with our inner piece here, I want us to continue working with our colors that we have, and we're going to be using them in a couple of places. We're going to be using them with the ladybug, and we're going to be using them with the spoken. So let's go ahead and hold on to those, and I'm going to zoom in on the ladybug here, and I'm going to start with a little bit of yellow in the ladybug. Now I know that you're thinking to yourself, why would I put yellow in something that's mostly red? And what I'm looking for is a really nice foundation of warmth inside of the ladybug. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that orange, and let's zoom in just a little bit more so that you can see. I'm going to dust a little bit on the inside of the ladybug wing. And then I'm going to come in with some of that magenta and start to dust the outer edge. And you can see that there's a real dichotomy between the orange and the magenta, and that's because the magenta is a much cooler color, and it gives a really nice feel to the shade. Now once I have that, I'm going to pick back up that yellow that I was working with earlier, and I'm going to blur out the edges. And you can see that that gives a really nice feel to that ladybug. So it's not one-dimensional, it has a little bit more to it. I'm going to come to the outside edge and just give a little press with that magenta. And that gives it a little bit of a glow. So go ahead and do your ladybugs, and then when we come back, we'll work with spoken. Isn't that fun? So what I love about this is that it's taking your eye and it's bringing it outward, and we're going to continue to do that by carrying this color a little further out. So let's come into spoken here. I'm going to zoom in on this, and I'm going to start with those three colors again. This time I'm going to take the yellow, and I'm barely touching the page. I want you to think of tickling the page as if you were holding a feather in your hand instead of a pencil. And I'm working on the tip of the pencil here because I know that I'm working in a narrow space. And I'm just starting to dust into that area. Now once I've got that, I'm going to pick up my orange, and I'm going to come into the center here, and I'm going to start by bringing out that orange about 3/4 of the way. I'm going pretty lightly with that orange. I don't want it to feel heavy-handed here. And you'll notice that when you're layering colors, the pencils want to glide right over each other. So it really works out to go lightly instead of to go heavy. Once I've had a chance to bring that orange in, you're going to see me pick up the magenta, and the magenta is going to go towards the center, and that's going to pull your eye in towards the center. Notice that I'm leaving some of that orange there as well. We're trying to get an ombre of color. I'm going to pick up the yellow, and I'm going to start to roll back on that orange. Notice how I'm trying to blur out the edges. I'm going lightly, and I'm just starting to soften the color. Notice the difference between here and here just by doing that. See that line of demarcation? Notice how this blends a little bit more. And notice how that really makes spoken come to life. Go ahead and finish up yours. I've got 3 more to do, and then when we come back, we'll start in on that flower. Okay, so you can see I've had a chance to go all the way around, and I'm really loving the way that that brings nice movement into the corners here. It gives the piece a little bit of electricity. So we're going to let go of the reds, the yellows, and the oranges, and we're going to start to pick up some cooler colors. I've got in my hand the Dahlia Purple, which is PC1009, and then I also have in my hand one of my favorite colors. This is the blush pink. Now normally I'm not really drawn to pink, but I really love this one because it has such an earthy tone to it. We're going to continue to work with that sunburst yellow as well. We're going to use that as a blending tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the blush pink first, and we're going to come into the centerpiece. So I'm going to start by working with the petals that are in here, and I'm going to start with that blush pink. You'll notice that my pencil is really well sharpened up and that I'm holding the pencil really far back. I'm going to go ahead and start to just dust down a little bit of color onto the page here. And you'll notice that I'm going fairly lightly. Now I am going up onto that top petal here, but you'll notice on the sides right here and here, I'm leaving it alone. I'm going to leave that white. We'll come back in later with another tool and work with those. So I'm just going to go in with that pink, and then I'm going to let go of the pink for a moment and start to bring in that darker dahlia purple. Now the reason why I'm using the dahlia purple with the pink is because these two blend really beautifully together. So I'm going to go ahead and do a really soft dusting of that dahlia purple in towards the bottom of the piece here. And you can see that these two colors really contrast nicely with each other. Once I have that, I'm going to come up and just do a little dusting right here underneath the ridges of that flap that we created. And then I'll come back down and give this a little bit of a push. Once I have that, I'm going to come back in with some of that blush pink, and I'm going to dust it through. Now remember, if you don't have the same colors that I do, you can use a regular pink and this will work out pretty nicely with the dahlia purple or violet if you have the color violet. You just want to try to get into the same hue, right? So I'm going to come in and I'm going to come up to the top at the back end of this little petal here. And then I'll dust a little bit of that pink and blur the edge. So you can see that these two pick up really nicely together. Now to give this a little bit of interest, I'm going to dust a little bit of yellow right at the edge of the petal. I'm really barely just touching the page, and you can see that that brings a really nice luminousness to this. So I'm going to go around and do all the internal petals just like that. You go ahead and do yours as well. Take your time with this. This is really a time to enjoy color and really let yourself get fully immersed into it. Okay, so you can see I've had a chance to start in that flower there, and I've got a really nice vividness that's going on in the center. I'm going to show you how I worked on the background pieces here. So let's go ahead and zoom in. And we're going to talk about doing that shading with these background pieces. So you can see I've already started with the tips with the pink, and I'm going to come in now and let that pink dive down in between the petals here. So you can see I'm coming down fairly softly. And I'm going to pick up my magenta here, and I'm going to let that, or rather not the magenta but the dahlia purple. I'm going to let the dahlia purple float up just a little bit around the sides and up and in. And then I'll give this a little bit of darkness in between. I'll pick back up that pink and I'll start to blur out the edges, creating that softness. Same thing up at the top, giving this a little bit of the dahlia purple right in here. Blurring out the edge. and then coming in with a little bit of that yellow. Now, as things get smaller and smaller towards the background, you might have less and less room to work with. So you can see I'm just doing little dustings of the dahlia purple and bringing it around the back edge. Picking up some of that pink, softening up the edges. And if you can get a little bit of that yellow in there, not a ton, you can see that that brings a little bit of interest in there. So go ahead and do those background pieces, and when we come back, we're going to start to work with the outside edges. So this is really starting to come along. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into these areas that are behind the petals here. You can see that I've got these little spaces that don't have any petals in them. If you wanted to, you could continue your petals. If you don't want to, you can use the technique that I'm using right now, which is I'm going to go into those little areas that don't have anything, and I'm going to add a little bit of pink right in there, just to give it a little bit of continuation. But what I am going to do is I'm going to start to bring in a little shadow around the frame, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So you can see that I'm turning the tile as I work here, and just starting to dip into those little odd negative spaces. Once I have that, I'm going to pick up that dahlia purple again, and I'm going to start to create a little shadow that's going to go around and almost contain this flower that we have here. So you can see that I'm working around, creating that shadow, and you can see that the shadow is imperfect. I'm looking for a little bit of variation here. I'm not looking for a hard line or a block of color. It has a little bit of movement to it. So feel free to let it dip down over your flower a little bit. Really don't allow yourself to get tight here. Let yourself loosen up. And you can see that developing that shadow really works out quite nicely. See how that contains the space and gives it a little bit of, it almost creates a softness to it. You can see that I'm going across that line a little bit and just giving it a little bit of depth. And then if you want to, you can come back in with some of that pink and just blur out some of those edges. You can see that I'm just working right where the edges are meeting the pink and softening it up a little bit. Now, if you're working on really toothy paper that's got a lot of texture to it, this will also help to calm down some of that texture as you're working around the flower. But you can see how that holds the piece in place a little bit more, and I really like that. I hope you do too. All right, so go ahead and finish up yours, and then when we come back, we're going to start to work outward. Okay, so we're going to let go of those purples just for a little while, have them handy, and I'm going to pick up two colors that I really love. These two greens. I've got the lime peel green in my hand, and I've got Prussian green in my hand. Now, if you don't have the Prussian green, you can always substitute it for grass green. That's always a nice one too. Lime peel green is PC 1005. I love this green. It's a wonderful green to work with. It's got a really nice earth tone to it. And then the Prussian green, which is PC 109. However, if you don't have this one, you can absolutely use the PC 909, which is wonderful for that. And if you don't have the lime peel green, you can always substitute it with true green. That's a nice one too. It's got a more minty feel to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into where our ladybugs are, and we're going to start to create a defined frame here. We're going to use a little bit of shading that we do in the Zentangle community for a technique that is called Zen buttons, but in this particular case we're going to use it for the frame that we have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in and I'm going to softly work on the side of my pencil. You can see that the pencil lead is really long and sharp, and I'm laying down the pencil on its side. Notice how far back I am on that pencil. And I'm going to just rub the side of the pencil into the paper. Now I'll come over to the other side and I'll do the same, but you'll notice that in the center I'm developing this really pretty white highlight that's happening, and I'm looking for that. Now, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm making sure that it's not a hard bar of white. It actually has a little bit of movement to it, so that if I zoom in on it, you can see it's not a perfect line. I'm looking for a little bit of movement. I'm going to go to the outside edges now, and you'll see that I'm working on the tip of my pencil, and I'm starting to get a little bit of pressure on it so that I get a little bit of a pop or a glow. So once I've got that down, I'm going to pick up my darker green here, and I'm going to just give a dusting right along the black line. And you can see that this starts to give it a neon feel in the center, and that's really kind of intentional. So you can see that I'm just getting in there and giving that a little bit of a pop. Now I'll come in right on top of that black line and really give this about a medium pressure. If you feel like you're getting a hard line of demarcation here, you can always come back in with that lime peel green, that's the lighter green, and soften up your edges just by rolling right over the top of it. See how I'm doing these little circles with that pencil? It teases the color out, it makes it move. And look at how pretty is that bar. I just love that. So I'm going to go all the way around and use that technique, and then when we come back we're going to use a technique called wallpaper. Alright, so you can see that I've had a chance to go all the way around, and that's getting a really nice glow to it. You'll notice that in the corners I actually left the green out. We're going to be using a different color there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the darker color. You can see that I've got a nice sharp tip on it, and we're going to do a technique called wallpaper. Now the tangle that we're going to use for wallpaper today is called Kiko, and it's actually a headquarters tangle. And I love Kiko because it's really easy and fun to do inside of the piece. So Kiko looks a little something like this. It's 3 lines and then 3 lines horizontally, and then 3 lines and then 3 lines horizontally. And when it's done with a border, you can see that it develops this really beautiful thatching like shape. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put away my pen because I'm not using my pen for this. I'm picking up my darker pencil. You want to make sure that that pencil is really sharpened up. You can see I've got my pencil sharpener there and getting it ready to go. And I'm going to start by working on this area right in here. Now I tend to not press too hard when I'm doing my wallpaper because I want the lines to feel a little bit interrupted. I want it to feel like it's in the background, like it's wallpaper. It's not in the forefront, it's in the background. And because we're working with a darker color here, it will show up. So you can see that I'm really taking my time because your lines give you away when you're rushing. And you can see that it really gives this a nice texture. So I'm going to go all the way around and do mine, you go ahead and do yours too. Have fun with this. I really find this satisfying, and I hope you do too. So you can see I've had a chance to go all the way around, and this really has a nice feel to it. I hope that you're enjoying it too. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start to let go of the green here. The green is really used as a pop to get attention and also to break up the piece. We're going to start to come out into spoken here, and I'm going to be using two tools for this particular piece. I've got my blender or a blending stump. Some people call it a tortillon. And then I also have a graphite pencil here, and we're going to be using this for blending. So if you don't have a tortillon, you can always use a Q-tip and use that for blending. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start to come to where my spoken is, and you see that my graphite pencil is nice and sharp here, and I'm just very, very lightly, and when I say light, I mean it is hovering on the page light. And you can use a number 2 pencil, that will work just fine here. And you can see that I'm really just hovering around the outside edge of where spoken is. Now I am going to do a little dusting right into the tips of where spoken is as well. And you'll notice that I've developed this little light highlight in there. I'm going to take my little tortillon, and I'm doing little circles. And I am blending until I get to the place where it looks really nice and soft and almost like fog. And you can also see that I'm leaving a little white highlight in there as well. Now if you lose the white highlight, don't worry about it. You can always take an eraser and create that later. But you can see that what this does is it brings a little bit of definition into the piece. And it really makes this whole thing kind of pop in there. Now, if you want to come back to the outside edge and create a little bit of a shadow here, you can go back over what you just did and just bring a little shadow to the outside edge. If you want to, you can buff it out a little bit, but make sure to leave that light gray as well. So once again, it's the idea of an ombre of color. Which is so pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go all the way around and create that in towards the center of my spokens. So you go ahead and do yours as well. Okay, so you can see that I've had a chance to work on the outside edges. Now we're going to take some of that gray and move it into the center pieces in here. So let's come to the center. And right into our Cruffle, I'm going to dust a little bit of gray in here. And I'll pick up the blender and just give it a little dusting there. And then for our pieces that are in the center, remember how we have these little white parts of our petal? You're going to see me start to come in and dust in a little bit of gray into these, and I'll just do half of the flower so that you can see it. I don't want to take up too much time on the video for you. And I'm just going to just do a light blend into those flowers. So be really careful not to put too much of that in there. You'll notice that I'm leaving a little bit of white on the edges, which really gives this a little bit of pop. You can see the difference between this side and the opposite side. This side has a little bit more dimension. This side's a little bit flatter in its presentation. So go ahead and do that, and then when we come back, we're going to add a little bit more gray into where the ladybugs are. Okay, so you can see that I've gone through here. Now, I've purposefully gone into this one right here and not left any light in it. And I wanted to show you that you could come in with an eraser if you're using the graphite and bring back the light if you've lost it. So if you're fretting over or losing the light, you can always come in with an eraser and just add a little bit of light to it and give it a little bit of that dimension again. So what we're going to do is we're going to come now and look at the little ladybugs. And right underneath each ladybug, I'm just going to do a dusting of the gray. And then I'm going to let it blend out. But notice at the tip of the square, I'm leaving it light. So I'm just going to do that around each of these ladybugs. So you're going to see me come in and do a short little dust of gray, and then come in with the blender and soften it up, leaving a little light at the tip. Go ahead and do yours, and then when we come back, we're going to add in just a little bit of purple into our spoken. So that's really looking really cool. I'm loving this piece, one of my favorite new pieces here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of that dahlia purple, and we're going to come down to spoken here. We're also going to pick up some of that pink that we started with, that blush pink, and we're going to just add a little bit of that pink into the spoken circle here. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of the dahlia purple. Now you'll notice that I've left a little bit of white in there, and that's just to give it a little bit of dimension. Now if you have a white pencil from Prisma, this is PC938, you can come in and just do a little bit of a blur out. Notice how sharp that pencil is, and that's going to really help you to do the blending. So I'm going to go all the way around and do that in each of my spoken as well. So if you're like me, you probably love to do some highlighting with a white gel pen. I'm going to be using the Mizu Love here. This is one of my favorite new gel pens. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come into the center of this piece, and we're going to add a little bit of a highlight in there. And I'm just going to pick up that pen and add a little bit of line of white. And then I'm going to put a little dot or two down at the bottom just to give that a little bit of dimension. The other place that you may decide that you want to add a little bit of highlighting to is into the ladybug area. So I'm just going to come in, and right in here I'm just going to add a little bit of white right underneath each little ladybug here. So you can see that I'm turning the tile and just adding a little dot of white. Now, if you also want to add it into spoken, you're welcome to bring a little bit of it into spoken if you've got room for it. Some of these are a little bit small, so I might just add a little dot and keep it kind of simple and light. Not a lot of highlighting in this particular piece. Unless you wanted to add maybe some into your ladybug on one side just to give her a sheen, you're welcome to do that as well. That's another thing that I like to do. Makes her look a little bit more dimensional. Super fun and super easy. So go ahead, have some fun with those, and then we're going to do some last minute touches when we come back. So I'm really loving the way this one came out. I've picked back up my Micron Pn pen here, and I'm going to go ahead and put my chop in this lower left hand or lower right hand corner. And your chop is kind of your way of saying that you have completed the piece, or acknowledging that you're done with the meditation of Zentangle. And I hope that you've enjoyed this piece as much as I've enjoyed teaching it to you. I think these tangles are really fun. And hopefully you'll keep those colors that we talked about on hand so that if you're doing another tangle, you can try it out elsewhere and see how color can really bring a lot of dimension to your Zentangles. If you enjoyed the class, please give it a thumbs up or a nice review. Even better, go ahead and hit the subscribe button in the upper corner, and you'll be notified whenever I add another class to my YouTube page. That's it for me. I'm Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi. I look forward to tangling with you soon. Bye for now.